Hi, everybody. Today I'm going to discuss why the so called birth rate crisis is the state's problem, not yours. Now, we've been told that the declining birth rate is a civilizational emergency. Politicians are talking about it, economists warn about demographic collapse. Now, for those of you who read my book, you know that I actually advocate for a demographic collapse because that is how you dismantle the state that is not responsive to your needs and is oppressive. So they never really told you how a demographic collapse is your problem, right? So now they have entire programs designed to address it in South Korea, Hungary, Japan, Italy. They want to bribe and guilt people into having more children. And of course, in the United States, they have also taken away women's reproductive rights so that they can force women to have children against their will. Now, I just posted this article on Substack addressing the so-called replacement rate. It's a misnomer. 2.1 is not replacement, it's actually growth because people are living longer than ever. It's not like when you have children, your children literally replace you. No, you have children, they have children, and their children have children. So by the time you get to the third generational level, or maybe even the fourth generation, there may be 8 or 16 offspring in your lineage. So replacement rate is not what it actually, it's not descriptive of reality. It sounds like you're actually replacing your parents, but you're not. You're actually growing and expanding the population. If you're going by that 2.1 number. Now, global population is at 8.5. It's projected to get to 9. Wait. Actually, it's supposed to be about 10 by 2050, excuse me. There is no demographic cliff. Even if, though there actually is a decline, that's not a, we are already overpopulated. Even a minor decline is not anything to panic about. Maybe it is for the state, but not for you. There is no immediate shortage of humans. What there is a shortage of new taxpayers entering the system at the rate that the governments have planned for. So the government is spending, they have champagne taste with their money. They don't want to actually be responsible and account for their budget shortfalls. They don't want to have furloughs. We have a massive state with massive spending for things that you did not consent. We have a massive military budget, which just started another bullshit war, which has driven gas prices through the damn roof. So they have money for all this shit, and they want you to pay for it. Well, let's be accurate. They don't want you to pay for it. They want your potential children to pay for it, right? Because politicians don't even care about the future. They're just trying to maintain their own political viability. They want to get reelected. They want to remain in office. And so they will put these financial burdens off on future generations. They will pretend that these problems don't exist because so what that they're going to happen in the future, right? We talk about the non-identity problem. Those people don't exist. And as I told y'all before, the non-identity problem was about environmental ethics, that a person who doesn't exist does not have a stake in a healthy environment because they don't exist. So that same non-identity argument can be applied to economics. Those who don't exist don't have a stake in a secure future financially, they don't have a stake in having job prospects and a stable economy. No, they don't exist, therefore they don't have any standing to complain. And the politicians don't care. Their role is to placate their current constituents to make sure that they continue voting for them. Once they get out of office, it's not their problem. They're maintaining, well, in actuality, what they're really focusing on is their current election cycle or the next election cycle, right? So let's say you're a representative, you're focusing on getting elected in 2 years. If you're a senator, then what is their election cycle? Is it 4? So they're focusing on the next 4 years. They want to get reelected. So long as they can keep you happy enough to re-elect them into office, that's all they care about. Are they thinking 20, 60, 40 years down the road? No, they're not. They're not thinking about your children, your grandchildren. Now, there are many variables when they talk about population studies. There's multiple inputs. There's birth rates. Birth rates are just one factor, but death rates are another. Your lifespan is another factor. And the most dominant factor in the United States is not fertility rates, nor is it death rates. It's actually immigration. I've talked about this before, but the number one driver for the increase in population in the United States is not fertility, it's actually immigration. When a population expands faster than the economy can absorb the increased population, the predictable outcome is that there's going to be depressed wages, there's going to be fewer jobs, there's going to be more people than the number of jobs available. And of course, they don't want you to focus on it. They want you to put the state first. They want you to be a sacrificial animal. They don't want you to think about yourself. They don't want you to think about your potential children. And of course, most people fall for it. The social reward for procreating is too high. You're going to get so much social status by procreating. You're going to throw your children under the bus because why? Because you're going to get patted on the head. Because people are going to tell you how you're a contributing member of society because you procreated. You get to be on the side of the state and the capitalists that are trying to oppress you. They're going to give you a pat on the head because you did exactly what they wanted you to do with no pushback. You threw your children into lion's den. You knew they had no future. You knew that their jobs were going to eventually be replaced by AI. But so what? You got credit for it. You got your tax credits. You were told that you were a good person. You were a good, upstanding citizen. Never mind the fact that there's a finite amount of resources to go around. There's limited land, limited opportunities, limited job growth. The margin for a decent life declines with every new person brought into the system, right? Because we've seen this in the past. This is not like, they claim that they have debunked Malthusian economics, that overpopulation is a myth that has been debunked. It has not been debunked, and history actually shows this. What we see in history is that countries that have become overpopulated have resulted in a declining quality of life. And what inevitably happens is they start leaving their countries looking for lands that are not so densely populated. So they completely throw their own economies into the toilet by overpopulating. Now there are no jobs. Now there's no land. Now there's no prospect for a decent quality of life. Then they want to go to another land that isn't overly populated. And then, of course, that same cycle repeats because they're going to do the exact same thing there, trash that economy by, through their procreational gluttony. And then this is, what is it? Wash, rinse, repeat. And because we have a finite amount of land, eventually you're going to run out of places to escape. Where are you going to go? You're running into a brick wall. I talked about the Malthusian economics. Thomas Malthus was not incorrect. We haven't crashed yet because they keep propping up the economy through artificial means, through technology and innovation. They keep building new roads. They keep trying to manage infrastructure to artificially prop up the economy. They want to engage in globalization where they extract resources from the third world and bring them into the developed countries. So they don't see it. They don't see the actual consequences of their procreational gluttony. The chickens are going to eventually come home to roost at some point. Eventually, there's not going to be room to leave. There's not going to be room for ingenuity, for expansion, for new roads. This trickle economy, this alchemy where you just, create a false stimulus for new jobs. And they have so many solutions instead of just addressing what is directly in front of them and just doing what is common sense. Just stop fucking procreating. Just reduce the damn population. Stop with these fucking excuses. You know good and damn well that at some point there's going to be too many people to manage. And I'm using the word manage intentionally, because what it leads to is a dystopian hellscape to where there's so many people that you can't exist without the damn state, because you can't exist in a state of nature. You can't exist off the grid. You have to be hoarded into these massive cities where the state dictates resources, right? And we're probably going to get to a point where we're going to have rations because there's going to be so many damn people. I've been meaning to review that book, The Coming Age of Scarcity, which has a bunch of short articles compiled. I may eventually get around to that. But I want to get to the whole pattern of people leaving their countries for better opportunities. In the 1840s, the Irish fled famine. In their home country, they came to Boston, New York, and Liverpool. In the 20th century, millions of Italians, Poles, and Greeks left their overpopulated countries to come to United States. After World War II, the Caribbean and South Asians flooded Britain because of their economies. In the 1980s and 90s, and currently, those from South America who have overpopulated not just South America, but East Asia and all over, they have overpopulated their countries, breeded themselves into poverty. And where do they want to go? They want to go to a country that has more opportunities because there are fewer people. And then they want to breed like rats and then go way above replacement rate, taking more than their fair share, having 5, 6, 7 children. Never mind the fact that they're taking opportunities away from other people who may want to procreate. Their children are not going to have any future because they have to compete against all these other people. I'm not trying to disparage migrants, but at the end of the day, the objective fact is they do procreate at a rate that is far greater than a native population. Americans, by and large, do procreate at replacement rate. Most Americans have 2 children or less. Now, we do know that a lot of them do come with skills. I'm not going to say that all of them are low skilled workers. Some of them do come with skills, but I don't even think that is a legitimate basis for promoting immigration, because if there is a skills gap, then that should be addressed with the native population. The state should be incentivizing training, incentivizing that these people will have the skills necessary to keep the infrastructure stable. But they don't want to invest in the native population. Of course they don't. They don't give a shit if you can actually survive, if you're homeless, if you're able to feed your kids. They don't give a shit about any of that. No. Why do that? Why do that? These people already have the skills. They came from their countries invested in them, but there were no jobs in their country. So, hey, we have a global economy now. You're a global citizen. Your state has no loyalty to you. They're just going to recruit from people who don't even live in your country and just leave you by the wayside. Now, there's so many negative consequences from overpopulation. I don't know how anybody can say it's a myth when you can see what is directly in front of you. You can see stagnant wages. You can see housing being unaffordable because of the demand. Now, you can talk about the spectating. There are the spectators who will buy up all the property so that they can sell it at a profit or rent it at a profit. The only reason they're able to spectate is because they have a demand waiting for them to do that. If there was not a demand due to overpopulation, there would be no spectating. Now, the countries of origin don't want to fix the problems that drove these people out of their home countries. No, they're going to leave their countries. They're going to leave these problems unaddressed. And then it's going to become some other country's problem. And at the same time, they still want these people to procreate. This is unsustainable. This is completely unsustainable. And what I call for in my book is demographic collapse, because I'm trying to dismantle the state and actually promote a more localized economy of self-sufficiency, where you grow your own crops, where everything is produced locally, where you're not dependent on a global economy. Now, I don't know how people can deny overpopulation. You can see the overcrowded schools. You can see the overcrowded roads. You can see that there's not enough jobs. You can see that food prices are up. Why? Because it's supply and demand. If the demand is greater than the supply, then that's going to increase food prices. Never mind the fact that gas prices are through the damn roof, but that's also supply and demand. I know there's many factors in gas prices, but it's one of the most important variables. I know it's related to this bullshit war in Iran. But aside from that, if there were fewer people using gasoline, gas prices would go down. And the proof of this is during COVID, when people had to stay at home and they were not driving as much, gas prices were cheap as hell. They were cheaper than they had been in a very long time. There were fewer people using gasoline. Supply and demand. This is not rocket science. Now, another problem we need to address is the dilution of your individual vote. In democracy, your vote is a fraction. Now, I talked to y'all about in my book about how in democracy, you're a so-called sovereign citizen, at least according to Rousseau. Rousseau is the only one who embraced this concept. Not Hobbes, not John Locke. This is something concocted by Rousseau. You are a total slave and only a fractional master. And you're a fractional master based on the number of other voters. So the more voters there are, the less your individual vote matters. And that's why they want to flood your country with more immigrants, and they want you to procreate even more. Okay, I'm not disparaging immigrants. It's not their fault. For anybody who thinks that's what I'm doing, I'm not blaming them. I'm blaming the state. I'm blaming the state for not taking care of its citizens. And that's why I say the state is illegitimate. The state does not serve its function. It is not a legitimate social contract. It does not do anything that serves your interests. The state is an end unto itself. It does not give a fuck about you. And I'm trying to expose that. That's why I'm an anarchist. I was a statist for most of my life, just like most of you. I have come to the damn light. So these politicians want to dilute your vote because then they don't have to be accountable anymore. In a district that has 5,000 constituents, politicians actually have to be accountable. But if that same district accounts or becomes a population of 500,000, now they don't have to be accountable. Now they can still win whether they serve your interests or not, because there's so many people that you don't matter. You can write your letter, you can try to organize, but they don't have to be responsive. I don't need your vote. I can get other people to vote. The smaller the constituency, the harder it is to hide behind poll averages. And they intentionally dilute your vote in order to avoid accountability. Now, they want to tell you that an increased population is better, but it's not better for you. It's better for the state. And the state's interest is not the same as your interest. Not at all. The state's interest is in expansion and domination, oppression, exploitation. You just want to survive. The state doesn't give a shit whether you survive. Not only that, the state's interest is in competing with other states. So the state wants to bring in more people, right? They want to take citizens from other countries. I would use an analogy, but maybe I shouldn't. But I think they actually take pride in being able to say, I took your citizens from you. I would say it, the analogy, but it probably would be sexist, so I'm probably not going to say it. A larger population means a larger tax base, more GDP. And by the way, they judge the economy based on the GDP, not based on whether you can actually put food on the table. The GDP has nothing to do with you. The GDP is about these corporations. A larger population means more military age recruits for the military to serve in these bullshit wars. It means more funding for pensions, for Social Security. It means more legitimacy for the state. It means that you are investing in their institutional stability and sustainability. And so this is why they want you to procreate. This is why they restrict your abortion rights. This is why they don't want you to have access to contraception. And anybody who tries to tell you that you should procreate and that you shouldn't have access to contraception, it's because their status, it's because they don't give a fuck about you. They care more about the state than they care about you. And beneath the veneer of caring about humans, these people are decidedly anti-human. They don't care about human rights. They don't care about women's rights, most importantly, because the weight is going to fall disproportionately on women, not men. Women are the ones who carry the children. They are the caretakers primarily. The women who procreate, especially at a younger age, they're not going to have an economic future, and they know this. And I believe Ayn Rand had a direct quote about that, which I'm not going to butcher, but she said something to the extent that those who want to restrict women's abortion rights basically hate women. It's the most hateful thing you can do to force a woman to have a child against her will. Never mind the fact that it's actually hate against a child who is forced to exist under this oppressive system. But who cares about the child? Who cares about the woman? The only thing that matters is the fucking state. They don't want to earn your procreation. They don't want to earn an increased birth rate, because the bottom line is that if there was a decent quality of life for the parents, if the parents were happy, they would naturally procreate. You would not have to tell them to procreate. They would do it on their own accord. So the very fact that people don't want to procreate means that they're not happy, despite these bullshit happiness studies. The greatest indicator of happiness is people's decision to procreate or not procreate. But they don't want to earn your procreation through being responsive. They don't want to earn. I mean, I'm not a socialist traditionally. I'm an anarchist. I would like to dismantle the state. But the bottom line is that the state is not doing its job, which is why I'm an anarchist in the first place. But they don't want to give you a universe. I mean, they don't want to give you universal health care or child care. They don't want to give you a livable wage. They don't want to stop oppressing you. They don't want to address the police harassing you. They don't want to address qualified immunity that is making your life a living hell and allowing these state actors to get away with tyranny. They don't want to reform the legal system to make judges actually uphold the law to where you would actually have a legitimate social contract. No, they don't want to do any of that shit. They just want to make your life a living hell and then shame you and guilt trip you into having more children. Now, these people are hardcore collectivists because they don't care about you as an individual. They don't care about individual rights. They don't care about individual happiness. They don't care about individual suffering. What they care about is the collective. So as long as the state maintains its infrastructure, as long as the state sustains itself at your expense, who gives a shit that you're miserable? Who gives a shit that you can't feed your children? Who gives a shit about the homeless? Who gives a shit about the gas prices, food prices, the fact that you have to work 2-3 jobs just to live? Who gives a shit about that? When it comes to the state, it's collectivism. It's all hands on deck. We all have to participate. what did Uncle Sam say? Think not what your country can do for you, what you can do for your country. Yeah, when it comes to you, it's every man for himself. It's your responsibility to figure out how you're going to navigate this life. It's your responsibility to figure out how you're going to pay your bills, how you're going to pay your student loans, how you're going to take care of your children, how you're going to pay your medical bills, the medical bills that have been inflated by their monopoly over the practice of medicine, an illegitimate monopoly, mind you. The state's so-called interest in your child ends at birth. Now they're going to claim that they still have to continue interest because, of course, they're going to force you to exist against your will. Even if you don't want to exist, they're going to claim that they have an interest in that too. Even if they don't actually have to prove that they have taken an interest. They don't have to show any affirmative steps that they have taken to actually take an interest in your life. They don't have to prove that they actually help you, that they were actually there for you. No, the state can just make a naked claim that they have taken an interest in your life. They don't have to prove anything. And you know this because they will always talk about the state interest when they're having these policy debates. If you have any litigation against the state, they will always claim that they have a state interest and they don't have to prove shit. And this so-called state interest is the basis for their sovereign immunity. Because it doesn't matter about what you experience as an individual. What it matters is the collective. So their sovereign immunity is based on the fact that they are responsible for the collective good. The collective matters more than you as an individual. So if the state has no obligation to you or your potential children, why would you be foolish to reward this oppressive state with more children so they can be just as subjugated and oppressed as you, so that they can live in economic poverty, so that they can not have any rights that are enforceable, so that they can live in a world with no jobs, overpriced housing, so that they can have 3 roommates and be sleeping on the floor in somebody's living room on an air mattress, so that they can take out student loans and then still not have a job waiting for them, and they still can't pay it. They still have to pay it because it can't be declared in bankruptcy. It can't be dissolved in bankruptcy. Of course, they decided to give them special protection. They can't even explain why they gave special protection to those who loan money for student loans. At the end of the day, still is an unsecured debt, just like credit card debt. But the state is going to make sure that they get their damn cut first. They're going to give themselves protection. And of course, when they're trying to manufacture consent for it, they always have to spin it in a way to make it seem like it's in your interest, how you benefit from it. The damn taxpayers, right? Oh, if people could have their student loans discharged in bankruptcy, that's going to hurt you as the taxpayer. And then these foolish people align themselves with the state, thinking that their interests are the same as the fucking state. And they fall for this fucking okie doke. Now, your leverage is no longer your labor. They don't need you. They don't need you to work. They don't need workers. They're just going to replace you with AI anyway. Your only leverage is your decision to procreate. You can do this the smart way or you can do this the hard way. You can try to organize and protest and beg and plead for an unresponsive state that doesn't give a fuck about you. You can just click your heels 3 times and hope that the future will be optimistic. You can just think positive. You can just throw caution to the wind, procreate, and hope that your children end up okay, even though you know that they're not going to be okay. But I guess you get E for effort. I mean, you know that they don't have a damn future if you look at it objectively. But as long as your intentions are good, then that's all that fucking counts. Who cares if they fucking suffer? At least you got what you wanted out of it. At least you got your cut. You got your social validation. You got your legacy. Who gives a shit if your children suffer? Who gives a shit if they don't have a job, if they end up in poverty? I've already talked about how AI is going to replace all these jobs. It's already happening. This is not speculative in any way. Again, the state's interest is not the same as yours. You should put yourself first. Don't be. Not only should you not be a sacrificial animal for yourself, you should not sacrifice your damn children. The state's interest is not the same as yours. The state needs future taxpayers, consumers, citizens. This is what gives the state its legitimacy. When birth rates decline, the state has to earn new births. Don't just give it to them willy-nilly. I don't think that you should procreate anyway. I think that you should abstain just because any child you create is going to suffer and die. But even if you're not going to adopt the full antinatalist position, even if you don't think procreation is unethical, you can still think about the strategy for navigating through the state, that your only leverage is your decision to procreate. So if you want a better future for yourself, if you want better childcare, better housing, healthcare, all that shit, then don't just sit up here breeding children like rats. Hold out. Hold out. Hold the damn line. What do they call that? When they have the, I'm trying to think of the term, a shutdown. They have the economic shutdown in Congress, a government shutdown. You should have a procreational shutdown. You should have a boycott. I guarantee that if birth rates decline, within 10 years, the government will be responsive. They will capitulate to every demand that you fucking make. And we know this because in European countries that have declining birth rates and controlled immigration, their governments are actually responsive. They have very high quality of life. They have all of these services that we don't have. They have universal health care. They have good jobs. And by the way, some of these countries even have the right to medical assistance in dying. Why? Because the state has to be responsive when your vote is not diluted. If your vote is diluted, they can just ignore you and tell you to go to hell. Your decision to procreate is the last sovereign decision that you actually have. It's the one thing that you actually control. You have no control over anything else. No control over anything else. Nothing that's consequential. Of course, you can focus on consumer choice and bullshit like that. But when it comes to your actual existence, to your rights, you don't have any fucking rights. You have privileges. The state can trample over your rights with full impunity. You can't sue them and get any justice. They're just going to claim qualified immunity, which translates into absolute immunity. Don't have children out of guilt. Don't have children because a politician told you. Don't do it because they told you civilization depends on it. Who gives a fuck about civilization when you are oppressed? Fuck civilization, fuck their infrastructure. The declining birth rate is not a crisis for you. It's a problem for the state. And the state is not your problem. The state is supposed to exist for you. You don't exist for the state. And if the state is not serving your interests, then fuck the damn state. Now, let me go through these comments because I've been talking for a while. Because I have to post it in order to put tags and add a thumbnail. So I have to schedule for a future date. I don't want to explain how StreamYard works, but basically I have to create an event in order to edit it. So the dates are not accurate. I do my live streams whenever I'm able to. You disregard the date. I just come on randomly. I can't schedule it in advance because my availability is not predictable all the time. Right, GMOs increase the food artificially. Everything is artificial now, and everybody wants to complain about how there's so many pesticides and hormones, and you don't think that has anything to do with overpopulation? How do you mass produce food for a population of 8 billion? Now, you can try to navigate to say one option is better than the other, but you think that you're entitled to organic food when you have a population of 8.5 billion? Are you out your fucking mind? No, you're going to get the chemical latent trash that is given to you because that is your only option at this point. I don't know why. I don't know why. I don't want to address CNW because that's not what this live stream is about. But I guarantee that if I were to go over there and help him with his live streams, all would be forgiven. He would welcome you with open arms. But I don't want to talk about him. I really don't. That's not what this live stream is about. Because every time when people bring up these actors and I respond, they blame me for it as if I'm just sitting around talking about them. No, I'm responding to the comments. Right, they're potato famine, exactly. Right, but they don't give a shit about that. You know what they're going to do? They're going to say it's your fault. They're going to say pull yourself by your bootstraps. I don't know, just figure out something. Or no matter what, they're going to say it's your fault. If you go back to school to try to get better skills so that you can become employable, and then you get the skills, and now that job has been replaced by AI, they're still going to say it's your fault. These people have no damn solutions. And so all they can do is project. They're not going to take any accountability for any of it. Right, that's a fucking joke. That is an absolute joke. Didn't he say he had that damn meme of him portraying himself as Jesus? Right. Let me read this. If one person goes missing, then it's a tragedy. But if 1 million people die in wars or something, then it is a statistic. Yet, see how that happens all because of the recklessness of procreation. Here's the thing though. If you live in a small town, let's say 10,000 people, and a person dies, everybody would recognize it as a tragedy. But if you live in a town of 500,000, people are dying every day. Who gives a fuck? They're just going to step over you like roadkill and then go on to the next story. Your death becomes completely irrelevant. Who gives a shit? People die every day. One person faces severe mental problems, then, oh, poor this person. But then, once billions of people experience depression and S thoughts, now it's epidemic and lazy and weak generation. No, I'm live. I'm live. Yeah, they don't care. They don't care. It is live. Well, that's in their profane, apocryphal version of Christianity. I reject that. I don't know what you call it. That faith-based King James bullshit. Exactly. Jesus didn't procreate. Do what Jesus would do in this situation. Jesus lived a life of procreational abstinence. So why don't these Christians live like Jesus? Of course they'll say, "Oh, I'm not Jesus. Jesus was divine." No, you actually are supposed to live like Jesus. You're supposed to be as Christ-like as possible. It says it right there in the damn Bible. It literally says that you are the bride of Christ. And if you know anything about marital coverture, there is a unity between you and the person or entity that you're married to. So you are one unit. You and Christ are one. You are the same. You don't get to say, I'm over here, Christ is over there. No, that's not what it means to be a fucking Christian. And if you don't take your role as a fucking Christian seriously, then maybe you should just abdicate that title. Maybe you should just say, I'm not Christian anymore, but I hope to be Christian because it's fucking so. I'm not Christian. I just hope to be a Christian. Right. They never married. Boycott. The one thing that the state can't control. So this continues to happen, yet one still want you to breed like a good little pathetic sheep, minded, oblivious, sacrificial slave, but you shall not because my God, this is so poignant. Because you know that the more you do, the more I can't even get through this shit without cracking up. The more this happens, and the more that it be our fault, yet we continue to run away from that. The more of us there are, the less the less that you matter. The more certain things that more being experienced, the less that the individual matters. Yet the more the individual gets trapped and overwhelmed with pathetic ad hominems from the average sheep. All nations, all countries, all of the oppressions they continue to be, for the time is overdue. How can we pull ourselves up by the bootstraps when we don't have boots to begin with? They don't care about that. That's your problem. Figure it out. That is why you must say, forget procreating, bitch, instead pro in it all, so that this superfluous, obnoxious futility goes on no longer. All states, all governments, all technologies, all nations, all countries, all of the oppressions they continue to be, for the time is overdue. Also, indeed, it is impossible to get a job now, or at least getting much more difficult to do so now. Now remember, you need 5 years of experience for this entry-level job and 6.9 million ghost jobs. And look at this, go to college. College gets oversaturated. Learn to code. Coding gets oversaturated and taken over by AI. Go to trade school, and now trade schools get oversaturated too. Exactly, there's no opportunities because of overpopulation. But they can't make the connection. This shit is so fucking obvious. Fools never be learning their lessons. Each trend chase, each trend eventually oversaturated, and eventually extremely underpaid, yet they continue to repeat the cycle. Mic drop. All right, y'all. That is my rant for today. The more of us there are, the less you matter as an individual. Stop procreating. A procreational boycott will be the solution to all your problems. And with that being said, you guys have a good night, and I am out.